You ever wonder if the rules for getting smarter have, well, changed? Today, we're going to put that to the test. We're diving into 2 articles on boosting your brain power. And get this, they're from the exact same magazine, Reader's Digest, but they're separated by almost 40 years. So, what's changed? What's stayed the same? And most importantly, how can we build the ultimate toolkit for learning today? Let's jump in.
So, our little time-traveling journey starts back in 1985. We're talking a pre-internet world where mastering study habits was everything. And then we're going to fast-forward all the way to 2024, where science has totally flipped the script, shifting our focus to, holistic brain health. It's a really fascinating look at how the very idea of what it means to be smart has evolved.
Okay, so here's the game plan. We're going to break down the advice from each era, then put them head-to-head to see what's what. After that, we'll build a killer modern toolkit that pulls the best from both worlds. And then we'll wrap it all up by looking at the big picture.
All right, let's get right into it. First things first, let's meet our 2 key players and really set the stage for this 4-decade-long conversation about learning. So, in one corner, we've got Patricia Skalka's 1985 article. Think of it as a classic, no-nonsense manual for hitting the books. And in the other corner, we have Lori Budgar's 2024 piece, which is this totally modern guide that's all about neuroscience. Same magazine, right? But a world of difference in how they tackle the subject.
All right, let's fire up the time machine and head back to 1985. You gotta picture it. The personal computer is just starting to be a thing in people's homes. So learning, it's pretty much all about how well you can sit down and really tackle a physical book.
So, the article opens with this great little story about 2 friends, Ted and Dan. They're talking about a book they both read, and poor Dan walks away feeling like he's just not as smart. But here's the kicker, and this is the author's whole point. Ted wasn't naturally smarter. Nope. He just knew how to learn better. This idea that learning is a skill you can actually build. I mean, that was a pretty revolutionary concept for back then.
And that brings us to the core of the 1985 playbook. It's basically a tactical guide for taking on a textbook. Stuff like scan the material first to get the lay of the land, talk to yourself as you read, use those classic memory tricks, organize facts, get rid of distractions, and figure out what kind of study space really works for you.
Okay, this sentence might sound a little weird. But believe it or not, this was the secret weapon for a whole generation of kids learning to spell the word arithmetic. It's a perfect example of something called a mnemonic device, which was like a total cornerstone of how they thought about memory back in '85. So what exactly is a mnemonic? Well, it's just a clever memory shortcut, really. The whole idea is to take something new and get it to move from your short-term memory into your long-term memory. The article has another fantastic example. To remember the Spanish word for duck, which is pato, you'd imagine a duck wearing a pot on its head. That silly, vivid image? It sticks.
Okay, now let's hit the fast-forward button. We're jumping 40 years into the future. The internet is literally in our pockets, and what we know about the brain has just exploded. So, how has the advice changed? Let's see.
Right off the bat, the 2024 article completely broadens the definition of smart. It's not just about how well you do on a test anymore. Not at all. It's about building your total brain power through the things you do every single day, and it's all backed by modern neuroscience.
A lot of this modern thinking comes from theories like Howard Gardner's idea of multiple intelligences. And the theory is pretty simple, really. It says we can be smart in a whole bunch of different ways. You might be brilliant with words, or numbers, or music. Maybe you're great with people, or maybe you're incredibly good at understanding yourself. All of a sudden, being smart wasn't this single, one-size-fits-all label.
Now, the 2024 list of strategies is pretty long. But it all starts with actively engaging your brain. The big idea here is to constantly give your mind a workout. So that means things like reading fiction to see the world differently, learning a new language to literally build new pathways in your brain, and just staying curious, keeping your mind flexible and open to new things. And this is where we see the single biggest shift. Things like exercise, meditation, getting enough sleep, even just hanging out with people. They're not just nice, healthy habits anymore. They're now seen as absolutely fundamental to how well your brain works. The main takeaway is that you've got to take care of your brain like the physical organ it is.
Okay, so we have both playbooks on the table now. Let's put them side by side and really dig in. Where do they agree? And where can we see the most dramatic changes in how we think about learning?
And this chart just lays out the pivot perfectly, doesn't it? Back in '85, memory was all about clever tricks. Fast forward to 2024, and it's all about brain health and neuroplasticity, which is just a fancy word for your brain's incredible ability to rewire itself. And focus? That changed too. It went from just, closing the door to get rid of distractions, to actively training your mind with things like mindfulness.
So, if you boil it all down, here's the core difference. The 1985 article was basically a manual on how to be a better student. But the 2024 article, that's a guide on how to have a healthier, more capable brain for your entire life.
So what does this all mean for us right now? Well, the cool thing is, we don't have to pick a side. In fact, the most powerful learning strategies today come from mixing and matching the best ideas from both worlds.
Okay, hybrid tip number 1, mindful mnemonics. Here's how it works. Before you try to use one of those classic 1985 memory tricks, take 5 minutes to meditate. You're using a 2024 technique to get your brain calm and focused, and you'll find that the old school hack works way, way better.
All right, next up is structured curiosity. Let's say you decide to learn to play the guitar. That's a perfect 2024 brain-boosting goal. But instead of just jumping right in and trying to play a song, you'd apply the 1985 big picture strategy first. You'd learn the basic music theory, the parts of the guitar, that kind of stuff. It gives your new, curious goal a really solid, old-school foundation to build on.
And for our last one, let's talk about upgrading your journaling. Journaling, or reflection, is a huge 2024 habit. But here's the twist. After you're done writing, go back and apply a 1985 technique. Organize your thoughts into categories. Make little groups for your insights, your challenges, what worked. This one little step can turn a simple diary entry into an incredibly powerful tool for really understanding yourself.
Looking back across this 40-year journey, it really reveals something timeless, doesn't it? It's that very human desire we all have to just learn and grow.
I mean, we've seen the tools change completely, right? From index cards and clever sentences to meditation apps and what we eat. But that fundamental drive, that's always been there. It doesn't matter if it's 1985 or 2024, we're all just looking for ways to better understand the world around us, and maybe ourselves too.
And that kind of leaves us with one big final question to chew on. In today's world, with information everywhere, we have more ways to get smarter than ever before, but what does it truly mean to be wise? Now that's a thought worth holding on to.